However, despite both the House of Representatives and the Senate passing resolutions in 2019 recognizing this tragedy, no United States president has ever joined in the acknowledgement. This week, my colleagues in the Congressional Caucus on Armenian Issues and I sent a letter to President Biden urging him to formally recognize the Armenian Genocide.
That letter, spearheaded by the co-chair of the Armenian Caucus, Valley Congressman David Valadao, met by immediate response by President Biden on Friday in his first phone call to the Turkish dictator Erdogan. Since taking office, President Biden revealed his plans of formally recognizing the Armenian Genocide, becoming the first U.S. sitting president to do so. So a historic moment for the Armenians in the Valley, across the U.S., and even more so for our homeland, with the significant proclamation by the president. So lots to talk about with our exclusive panel this week on the 106th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. Let's take roll call. The executive director of the Armenian National Committee of America, based in D.C., Aram Hamparian. Vice chair of the Armenian Caucus and California Congressman joining us from Burbank, Adam Schiff. Famed criminal defense attorney and trustee on the Armenia Fund International Board joining us from New York City, Mark Geragos. And the first honorary consul of Armenia in the United States who represents the Central Valley, Berj Apkarian, joining us from Fresno. Thank you all for being on this special Sunday Morning Matters. And Aram, I'll begin with you. President Biden's announcement and recognition. Give me a sense of the magnitude of this.
President Biden has rejected the longest-lasting foreign gag rule in American history. He has rejected a veto that has been exercised over U.S. policy on a known case of genocide. He's done what presidents before him have been afraid to do. We thank him for his leadership, and we look forward to working with him as he translates this statement into a sustained policy that supports Armenia, protects Armenia, challenges Turkey's denial, and ultimately paves the way for a just resolution of this crime.
Congressman, I want to come to you now. We know about the big letter that was sent to the president this week from about 100 lawmakers. That's including yourself. And I'm wondering, would President Biden have made that phone call to the Turkey President Erdogan even without that letter?
Well, I think there are a number of reasons why this was absolutely the right moment and the right president for genocide recognition. In the last session of Congress, for the first time in decades, we passed a resolution in the House and Senate with overwhelming numbers. We got over 400 members of the House to support genocide recognition. So coming into this administration, there was now a solid record of support on a very bipartisan basis in the Congress. But we have also seen this disastrous war that Azerbaijan and Turkey brought on the people of Artsakh. That has added new urgency to speak truth to power. And so this is the right moment for a president to recognize a genocide, long overdue moment, but a very important moment.
And Berj, I want to come to you, especially for Valley Armenians here. This is the day we've all been waiting for. Fresno, home to the only Armenian genocide monument at Fresno State in the entire country, as you know that. This is bigger than just Armenia. What is the global impact of this, Berj?
Thank you so much for being part of the show. And I want to thank Congressman Adam Schiff for taking lead in pushing the letter to the president's office to encourage him to do so. This is unlike the news outlet that is saying this is basically symbolic. I don't believe it is symbolic. It has far-reaching implications around the world, both in terms of encouraging other allies like British government as well as Israeli government and other allies of the United States to take the right step in the right direction in recognizing the historical fact of the Armenian genocide. And furthermore, I'm sure Mr. Geragos himself will touch base on the legal implication of such a resolution. It's not symbolic, it's far-reaching, It's overdue, and it's the right thing to do.
And Mr. Geragos, we're coming right to you as Berj really handed it off to you. But I want to start by saying, for someone like you, you fight for the human rights of Armenians. You help with the big fund that helps Armenia rebuild time and time again. What does this announcement really do for Armenia itself? And does this need to be said every single year by a U.S. sitting president?
It really does need to be said every single year. And Berj, thank you for that softball, because I was just thinking as Aram and was talking about it, and Adam, who's been on the forefront all along, and by the way is also my congressperson. The interesting thing about this, I was thinking back and harking back to arguing in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals over a decade ago, and they invalidated the statute which allowed some small legal recompense for this, and they did it on the basis that the word genocide was used. That literally is a Ninth Circuit published Court of Appeals opinion. So that argument is evaporating or is evaporated as we speak. And so there are far-reaching legal implications. And by the way, one of the reasons that Turkey has fought so strongly and has poured so much money into buying off lobbying efforts and basically the gag rule that we've talked about is Turkey's paying the bill for it. One of the reasons is because they wanted to avoid the legal and financial ramifications of this. And so this is huge. It's a huge moment because we do, as the congressman says, we have bipartisan support finally, once again, after 40 years in Congress, and now we have the executive branch, and that is a monumental. I can't overstate enough how important this is.
And Congressman, I'm going to retract back to you here, because obviously Turkey is going to clearly be outraged by this. That we understand. They are a NATO partner. You know that. So what's the backlash politically here?
Well, there was certainly some Turkish reaction to this that may involve recalling their ambassador and other diplomatic protests. But what we have seen around the world when other nations have recognized the genocide is there are threats that precede it, but actually what comes thereafter tends to be much more muted. Turkey understands the importance of the United States to Turkey. And I think we are far more important to Turkey than Turkey is to the United States. So my guess is they're not going to cut off their nose to spite their face. But I also would agree with what Mark was saying. You know, even beyond the ability to seek justice for the victims and the descendants of the genocide, it's also a very powerful message to Erdogan and to Aliyev and Azerbaijan. The United States is going to speak truth to power. That we are going to stand up in that region and around the world to autocrats and would-be autocrats. We are going to champion human rights even as we have our own issues, very serious issues at home. But that's very important, I think, in terms of the region where many in Artsakh and Armenia are deathly afraid of another genocide.
Well, we got a lot more to talk about with this exclusive panel here. They're nice enough to stay around for another segment. And when we come back, we've touched on the genocide of the past, but Armenia is in the midst of a genocide today over there in the indigenous land of Artsakh. Will the U.S. finally get involved? Our exclusive panel continues next. Well, today Armenia remains in a war over land in the region of Nagorno-Karabakh. Last September, 6 weeks of bloodshed over the land of Artsakh between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Russia brokered a peace deal, but Armenia had to give up their indigenous land in that deal. Well, you might remember the protests for peace that spilled into the streets of Fresno and up and down the state of California over the conflict. Where does it stand now? Let's bring in our exclusive panel once again on the Armenian genocide past and present. Aram Hamparian, Adam Schiff, Mark Geragos, and Berj Apkarian. So, Congressman, I'm back with you again. Will the U.S. get involved and redo that peace deal that Armenia had to lose land and they lost churches and monuments? They were torn down, destroyed. That brokered deal by Russia, will the U.S. get involved?
We have to get involved, and I think actually our disengagement from the region and the lack of a vigorous presence in the Minsk group of nations that are supposed to help resolve these issues in and around Artsakh led, I think, to this conflict. So we need to be engaged. We need, I think, first and foremost, to focus on the more than 200 POWs still being held in violation of international law by Azerbaijan, the potential war crimes committed against prisoners of war, the mutilation of the bodies of the dead. Those issues are of immediate concern, as well as the need to resettle those that were driven from their homes in Artsakh. So the U.S. needs to get involved. I think these two issues are not unrelated. The willingness of the United States to speak truth to power about the genocide is a good indication that the Biden administration will also re-engage in the region and speak truth to the powers there, and the need to account for and return the prisoners of war, but also dive into those long-standing issues and allow the people of the region the right of self-determination.
And Aram, I want to come to you. The president's recognition of the genocide now, does it really open the door for not only to open this new door of peace, but ultimately give the Armenians their rightful indigenous land back to them that was stolen?
I would agree. I think, as Congressman Schiff said, it's all basically one issue, which is the genocidal continuity, the continuation of genocidal intent by Turkey and Azerbaijan to basically eradicate the Armenians, to erase even our memory from the region. So the recognition of the genocide, as I noted earlier, is about translating a statement into policy that helps deliver the justice that Armenians deserve, but even more urgently, the security that they need. The security in terms of return of prisoners, in terms of humanitarian aid, in terms of checking aggression from Ankara and Baku against the Armenian people. That's, I think, the significance of the genocide recognition. Of course, there's legal, moral, other aspects of it, but the security aspect is very, very front and center for us, and we need to see the Biden administration, take this, the recognition as seriously, of course, as it should be taken, and press forward on a security agenda that's going to help make sure there isn't a second Armenian genocide.
And Mark, I know you've been looking into the prosecution of war crimes being committed in Armenia from this latest conflict. What's the latest on that? And now with this proclamation from the president, how much will that play a part into what you're doing?
It actually plays quite a bit into what we're doing. Number one, now that, part of the reason or frustration in the community about the Artsakh war is we don't think that that would have ever occurred if there had been genocide recognition in the first place. We think that part of the reason that that was allowed to occur on a world stage is because of, for a lot of political reasons, but because there was no genocide recognition. The oft-time adage that if you don't acknowledge it and condemn it, you're doomed to repeat it. Then you have this other insidious obliteration, if you will, that is going on right now, a genocide of the culture and all the cultural remnants in Artsakh that are piled on top of the fact that we still have POWs that are there that have not been released, that there are war crimes continuing as we speak, that there are obliterations of churches and cultural monuments, and some really sick kinds of things like a museum of Armenian soldiers that are being denigrated. I mean, it's a very, very disturbing situation there. And I think now we've got, you've seen Samantha Power, who has come out and said it was one of her regrets before that she hadn't done it. I'm sure was instrumental here in bringing that to the fore as well. I think the stranglehold that Turkey has had on our State Department has been broken. I think the dam has been broken, and I think you're going to see a whole new situation in that part and recalibration in that part of the world.
And Berj, you were just in that part of the world. You were in Armenia just a couple of weeks ago. Now you're back. But what's the mood there? Are the people still angry with the Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan?
Well, the nation is suffering the aftermath of the war, and it's very difficult because it's an emotional issue for them. They lost a lot of young soldiers, innocent people died, and that's due to lack of engagement. I agree with Congressman Schiff when he said we need to get engaged, and I think this proclamation itself sent a strong message to Erdogan and Aliyev that the world is not going to stay silent when aggression happens again Last time, the previous administration was hands-off on this issue. Now, the Armenian nation, Armenians around the world, and the Armenians in Armenia, they are looking up to the United States playing an important role in bringing stability and peace in that region. And this proclamation or recognition of the Armenian genocide sends a strong message to them to be much more careful not to destabilize that region.
Congressman, we just have about a minute and a half left, and I really want to ask this question because we've talked about the proclamation and we've had a frank conversation about this, and I'm just wondering, are you going to urge President Biden to finally remove the U.S. air base in Turkey, as it does stand, as you know, on land stolen from Armenia? And on top of that, the Armenian fund that we're pushing for of the $100 million from the U.S., will it be approved?
Well, let me turn to the aid first. We're certainly going to be doing everything we can to make sure that we provide the resources to Armenia, to Artsakh. It has been historically difficult for us to provide funding to Artsakh. I've worked on getting that in the appropriations bill year after year, and often the State Department doesn't spend what we give. Now, I hope that will stop with this administration and will be much more successful because the need there is so tremendous. In terms of the base at Incirlik, that's a discussion that the President, our Secretary of Defense, our NATO allies, and Turkey are going to have. I don't know that we want to advocate to remove that base. The fear has been that Turkey would throw us out of that base if we recognize the genocide. I think the practical reality is the economics of that base are such that I don't think that Turkey is going to want to lose the jobs that that base provides. But I don't think that our recognition necessarily goes hand in hand with the leaving of that Incirlik air base.
Well, we're out of time, and I just want to thank all of you for being with me on this extremely important and critical conversation today. As you all know, that we've had justice this week, not only in the United States for George Floyd, but we've had justice around the global map for the Armenian genocide. And I can't appreciate you guys more for talking about it and doing what you do. So Mark Geragos, Berj Apkarian, Congressman Schiff, and Aram Hamparian, thank you so much for being on Sunday Morning Matters.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.